While he was at the motor park, he collapsed. They say that the most dangerous person in any room is not the one who is crying. It is the one who is smiling. Because the one who is crying has already chosen truth, but the one who is smiling, you do not know what they have chosen. You do not know what they have swallowed. You do not know what they go home to. You do not know what they whisper into their pillow at the end of the night, when the world has gone quiet and there is no one left to perform for. This is the story of Adaeze. And if you think you do not know her, look again. Look carefully, because somewhere in this story you are going to see yourself, or your sister, or your friend, or the woman you passed in the market last Tuesday who smiled at you so brightly you never thought to ask if she was okay. Her name was Adaeze Obi, and she was, by every visible measure, a woman who had made it. She was born in a small compound in Enugu, the kind of compound where 6 families shared one borehole and the children took turns fetching water before school. Her father, Emmanuel, was a man who had once had dreams as big as the Niger River. He had studied accounting, he had worn a blazer, he had spoken of buying land in the city. But life has a way of collecting on debts you did not know you had taken, and by the time Adaeze was 7 years old, the blazer was hanging in a corner of the room, gathering dust, and her father was selling sachet water at the motor park, wearing slippers he had patched so many times the original rubber was only a memory. Her mother, Ngozi, was a woman made of iron and prayer. She woke before the sun, sold akara by the roadside, came home, cooked, cleaned, mended, and went to bed long after everyone else. She never complained. She simply did. And watching her mother, Adaeze learnt the first great lesson of her life, that struggle was something you carried in private, that hardship was not a conversation you had with the world, that you kept your head up, your clothes neat, and your face arranged into something that said, "We are fine, everything is fine." This is the first thing they taught her, though they never said it in words. The lesson was in the way her mother fixed her school uniform every morning, pressing it even when there was no starch left, using a cloth and hot water to make the creases sharp. The lesson was in the way they never told the neighbors when the light was cut off, or when they ate gari for dinner 3 nights in a row, or when the school fees went unpaid for a month. You do not show people your wound, you show them your smile, and you let the wound heal in the dark where no one can see it. Adaeze was a quick student, not just in school, though she was brilliant there too, but in the art of presentation. She learned how to laugh at the right moments, how to dress simply but in a way that read as intentional rather than lacking, how to speak of her family situation in language that obscured rather than revealed, how to make poverty look like modesty and struggle look like patience. By the time she was 17, she was the kind of girl people pointed to and said she carries herself well. They did not know what she was carrying. She got a scholarship, University of Lagos, Business Administration. The entire compound celebrated. Even the neighbors who had never asked how they were doing came to shake her father's hand and eat the jollof rice her mother made from money they did not have. And Emmanuel wore the old blazer that day. He dusted it off, pressed it, wore it, and his eyes were wet the whole time, though he never let a single tear fall. Because that is what they did in this family. They held it in. They smiled for the gathering. They cried for the pillow. University changed Adaeze, or rather it revealed a version of Adaeze she had always been preparing to become. In Lagos, nobody knew where she came from. Nobody knew about the patched slippers or the shared borehole or the nights they rationed kerosene. In Lagos, she was simply a sharp, beautiful, well-spoken young woman with potential written all over her face, and she leaned into that fully, completely, with everything she had. She found a part-time job at a boutique. She used the money carefully, not for comfort, but for appearance. A pair of good shoes, a handbag that looked expensive, a phone that was a model behind the latest, but nobody would notice. She understood with the intuition of someone who had studied people her whole life that the world rewards those who look like they have already been rewarded. It is a cruel mathematics, but it is the mathematics of the world we live in. She graduated with honors, got a job in a farm in Lagos Island, and then, because Lagos in the age of the internet is a stage and everyone on it is performing, she got Instagram. Now, this is where the story begins to turn, not sharply, not suddenly, the way rivers change direction, slowly, almost imperceptibly, until one day you look up and realize you are somewhere you did not intend to be. Her Instagram was a curated life. Sunday brunches she had saved 2 weeks for, outfits she wore once and photographed carefully before returning to the back of the wardrobe, captions about gratitude and growth and God's faithfulness, comment section full of fire emojis and women saying goals and men saying she deserved the world. She posted a photo in front of a car that was not hers. She had asked a colleague to borrow it for 20 minutes, 3,000 likes. She posted a photo from a hotel lobby she had walked into and ordered only a glass of water, 4,000 likes. She posted a photo from a rooftop bar she had nursed one cocktail for 3 hours because she could not afford another. And in her apartment, a single room in Yaba that she called a studio flat when anyone asked, she uploaded those photos and watched the numbers climb while eating Indomie from the pot, sitting on a mattress on the floor with a load-shedding darkness outside her window and a phone screen as the only light. Smile for the photo, cry for the pillow. But here is what you must understand, and this is important, so stay with me. Adaeze was not a bad person. She was not a liar in the way we think of liars. She was not cruel or manipulative. She was a woman who had been taught from the earliest age she could remember that the only acceptable face to show the world was a face that said, I am fine. And she had simply taken that lesson, that childhood survival strategy, and scaled it, upgraded it, brought it into the digital age. She had done what her mother did with the school uniform. She had pressed the creases sharp. She had made the struggle look like a choice. The followers grew, 50,000, then 100, then 2. Brands began to reach out, small ones at first, then bigger. She became a micro-influencer. The income helped, genuinely, but it also raised the stakes. Because now, the performance was not just personal, it was professional. Now, the image was the product, and the product had to be maintained. She moved to a bigger apartment. She could afford it, barely, with the brand deals and her salary combined. But she furnished it sparsely and photographed only the corners that looked complete. She bought a second-hand designer bag from a girl in her office who was moving abroad. She wore it in 15 posts over 2 years, always from a different angle. She was brilliant at this, genuinely gifted, and yet, and this is the part that will break your heart, she was exhausting herself. She was running a marathon in heels, performing sunrise to sunset, because the online world never sleeps. The timeline is always hungry. The algorithm does not care that you are tired, it only rewards consistency. And behind the scenes, the truth was piling up like unpaid bills, which in fact some of them were. Her father had a stroke. It happened on a Tuesday in November while he was at the motor park. He collapsed. A stranger called her mother, and Ngozi, who had pressed school uniforms her whole life, found herself standing in a hospital corridor being told about brain bleeds and ICU and costs that she could begin to imagine. She called Adaeze. Adaeze was in the middle of shooting content, her face done, ring light on. A brand gifted her a new skincare line and she had a deadline for the post. She picked up the phone. She heard her mother's voice, and for the first time in perhaps 20 years, her mother was not composed. Her mother's voice cracked. Her mother said, Adaeze, come, your father. She drove to Enugu the next morning. She sat in the hospital. She looked at her father, Emmanuel, the man who had once had dreams as big as the Niger River, who had worn the blazer at her graduation, who had held his tears all his life because that was what men like him did. And he was lying in a bed with tubes in his arm and the side of his face fallen, and he looked small in a way she had never thought a person could look. And she did not cry. Not in the hospital. She sat up straight, she held her mother's hand, she spoke to the doctors, she organized, she managed. She was the capable daughter, the Lagos daughter who had made it. And everyone in that hospital corridor looked at her and thought they are lucky to have her. But in the toilet of that hospital, in a cubicle that smelled of phenol and old grief, Adaeze sat on the edge of a bowl and she pressed both hands over her mouth so that no one would hear. And she shook. She shook like a tree shakes in a storm, violently, completely, all the way to the roots. She cried the kind of cry that has been stored for years, compressed into a tight, silent space inside the chest. And finally, it had a reason to escape. She cried for her father. She cried for her mother. She cried for the girl who learned never to cry. She cried for every photo she had ever smiled in while something inside her was dying. She cried until the tears ran dry, and what was left was just a hollow ringing silence. Then she fixed her face. She walked out. She held her mother. She said, Mama, we will handle this. Don't worry, I am here. She was here, But she had nothing. Her savings, such as they were already committed. Her salary was allocated. The brand deals were inconsistent, and the medical bills were real, immediate, and merciless in the way that only bills can be. She needed help, real help, the kind that required her to say to another person, "I am not okay. I cannot manage this alone. I need you." But she did not know how to say those words. She had never learnt them. They had been edited out of her vocabulary so long ago that she was not even sure the language still existed inside her. So instead, God help her, she went back to Lagos. She sat in her ring light. She posted a photo of herself looking luminous and purposeful with a caption about staying focused even when life gets hard. 20,000 likes. Comments flooded in. She is so strong. Goals. She never complains. That is why she will win. They thought the hard thing she was talking about was work stress or creative burnout or perhaps a difficult client.
Nobody knew about the hospital. Nobody knew about Emmanuel lying in a bed with tubes in his arm. Nobody knew that while they were typing fire emojis, she was sitting in her ring light glow, hollowed out, performing life for an audience that did not know her real one. She borrowed money, quietly, in pieces from different places so that no single person would see the full weight of what she was carrying. A small loan here, a favor there. She told no one the whole truth. She gave each person a partial story. And because she was Adaeze, because she was composed and articulate and looked like someone who always had a plan, people believed her. People gave her what she asked for without probing deeper. Her father recovered, slowly, incompletely. His speech was changed, his movement was changed, but he came home and Adaeze paid the final hospital bill and exhaled for the first time in 4 months. But something in her did not recover. She had been running on fumes for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to have fuel. She had been performing so consistently that she had lost track of where the performance ended and where the real person began. She would sit in her apartment at night and try to identify what she actually felt, not what she was supposed to feel, not what would make a good caption, but what she actually, genuinely felt. And she would find nothing. A flatness, a grey absence where feelings used to be. The doctors have a name for this, but Adaeze did not go to a doctor because going to a doctor would have meant admitting that something was wrong, and Adaeze did not do that. The brand deals continued, the posts continued, the smile continued, and the followers continued to grow because the algorithm was fed and the content was consistent, and nobody on the outside could see that the person making the content was disappearing. She met a man, Chidi. He was good, genuinely good, in the way that some people simply are, warm, attentive, the kind of man who noticed when you are quiet. He noticed with her. He would ask, "Adaeze, are you okay?" And she would say yes, always yes. And he would look at her, not convinced, but not knowing how to press further, and let it go. He proposed. She said yes, and the engagement photos were magnificent. She wore a red dress. He wore a cream agbada. The light was golden. The smiles were incandescent. The photographer, a friend of a friend who owed her a favor, captured something that looked exactly like happiness. The post got 80,000 likes. It was her highest performing content ever. That night, after Chidi had gone home and she was alone in her apartment, she looked at the comments for a long time. Everyone was congratulating her. Everyone was saying she deserved this. Everyone was saying her life was beautiful. And she felt nothing. Not happiness, not gratitude, not even sadness. Just that grey flatness spreading, and a fear, quiet but absolute, that she had performed happiness so many times that she had forgotten how to actually have it. That she had curated her life so carefully for everyone else that she had lost access to her own interior. That the mask had been on so long it had fused to her face and she no longer knew what was underneath. She opened a new post draft. She stared at the blank caption box. For the first time in years, she did not know what to write. The wedding was 8 months away. Chidi's family was wonderful. Her mother was joyful for the first time in years. Her father, slower now, quieter but present, had begun to smile again with the side of his face that still moved, and Adaeze began to come apart. Not loudly, not dramatically, not in any way that the algorithm or the followers or even the people closest to her could see. But in private, in the small hours of the night, she was dissolving. She stopped sleeping properly. She stopped eating properly. She sat in her apartment for hours doing nothing, which was so completely unlike her that if anyone had known, they would have been frightened. Shidi sensed it. He came over one evening and found her sitting in the dark, not crying, just sitting, and he turned on the light and he sat across from her and he said, Adaeze, talk to me. Tell me what is happening with you, really, not the version for other people, the real one. And she looked at him, this man who loved her, this man who had chosen her, this man who was sitting in her living room asking her to be real with him. And she opened her mouth and she smiled. I am fine, she said, just tired, work stress, you know how it is. He held her hand. He said, okay, but he did not believe her, but he did not know how to reach past the wall, because the wall was perfect. The wall was decades in the making. The wall had been built brick by brick since she was 7 years old, watching her mother press a school uniform with hot water and a cloth. 3 weeks before the wedding, Adaeze did not wake up. Not the way the stories sometimes go, not violently, not by her own hand, but quietly, in her sleep. The doctor said her heart, stress-induced cardiomyopathy, a condition where the heart, under sustained and unrelieved pressure, begins to break down. It is sometimes called broken heart syndrome, though that name is far too soft for what it actually is. It is the physical cost of carrying everything alone. She was 31 years old. And on her phone, at the time they found her, there was a draft, a post she had been working on the night before, a photo of herself, glowing, composed, beautiful, and a caption that said, grateful for every season. God is always working, even when you cannot see it. It had no likes. It had never been posted. But if you looked at her face in that photo, really looked, the way you never look at a photo on a timeline, the way you never slow down enough to see, her eyes were tired. Not the tired of a long week, the tired of a long life of holding something that should have been put down long ago. At her funeral, the church was full, because of course it was. Everyone had followed her. Everyone had been inspired by her. Her pastor spoke of her strength. Her colleagues spoke of her drive. Her followers, those who found out through a post that Chidi made, his hands shaking as he typed, they flooded the comments with broken hearts and candle emojis, and they said she was too good for this world. Her mother sat in the front row. Ngozi, who pressed uniforms with hot water and a cloth. Ngozi, who taught her daughter without a single spoken word that struggle is something you carry in private. Ngozi sat in the front row, and for the first time in anyone's memory, she did not hold herself together. She wept openly, loudly, the way women in our villages used to weep, without apology, without performance, without shame. And the sound of it filled that church, and it was not weakness, it was not failure, it was the truest thing in the room. Emmanuel held her hand. The side of his face that still moved was wet with tears. Chidi sat behind them. He did not speak at the service. He had been asked to say something. He had prepared something. But when he stood up, he looked at the congregation and he looked at the photo of her that was displayed, the engagement photo, the red dress, the golden light, the incandescent smile, and he sat back down. Because what do you say? How do you explain to a room full of people that they are here because they never asked, that the woman they are mourning was drowning in plain sight, and the plain sight was a phone screen, and the phone screen was showing them something she constructed rather than something she was? How do you explain that sometimes love is not enough, that you can love someone and still not reach them if they have decided long before you arrived that being reached is not safe? Listen to me now. I am almost done, and this is the part I need you to stay for. The elders say that a smile is a gift you give to the world, but a pillow is sacred. A pillow knows your real face. A pillow has absorbed more truth than any confession box, any therapy couch, any late-night phone call, because the pillow is where you go when the performance is over, when the audience has gone home, when there is no one left to be fined for. Adaeze Obi was a woman made of love and pride and talent and pain and a childhood lesson she never unlearned. She smiled for every photo. She cried for the pillow, and the pillow could not save her. May her story be the lesson that does. Subscribe, share this story. You never know who needs to hear it.